Alright, hello. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our first video in our new Shadow Empire tutorial series. I have not done a tutorial in forever. I did one for Crusader Kings 2, I did one for Stellaris, and people seem to like them. You know, they were pretty well received, so I thought, you know what, why not make a Shadow Empire video? I played enough of it, right? So, I think maybe today's the day. We're going to do a tutorial for this game. It's a huge game, and at the time of this recording, there is a DLC gonna drop reasonably soon. It's not out yet, the Republica DLC, but we'll see how that goes. But the way I see it, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm going to split this series up into probably about 5 videos. I might add a few extra ones at the end, depending on, you know, demand, or if there's anything you guys want to hear about, or if I just forget anything, I can throw it in at the end. But I think for now, we're looking at about 5 videos. So this first video is going to be just kind of like a getting started guide, you know, a bit of an intro to the game, talk a little bit about planet generation, talk about the UI, and then just kind of analyzing your initial starting situation and what to do. So this series is going to go over a whole wide range of topics across many different sort of categories, but I think overall, I think there's 5 sort of key overarching concepts that you need to get your head around if you want to be effective at this game. And as we get through this tutorial series, as we check these things off, I'll just kind of put a little note in the top right that we've kind of covered that. But the 5 basic points are bureaucratic points, logistics, model design, governance, and combat. So in my mind, those are the 5 key areas that that you kind of want to know. But like I said, we'll dive into those as we go throughout the series. And like I said, once we actually cover those particular things, we'll check it off the list. But yeah, let's get started right into this this first video here. So, all right. So first of all, what is Shadow Empire? Well, Shadow Empire is a turn-based 4X wargame hybrid. It's set in a post-apocalyptic far future. The idea basically is that there was a galactic republic of planets kind of thing. And there was a war, a big galactic war, and like a lot of the sort of infrastructure that allowed travel and communication between these planets was destroyed, thus leaving thousands and thousands of planetary systems isolated from one another. And so in Shadow Empire, we're basically playing on one of these planets, and our goal, of course, is to unify the entire planet under our banner, be it through war or diplomacy or a combination of both. So one of the first topics we're going to start with is planet generation. That's a pretty big part of the game. So let's go ahead and start a new game and we'll show how that works. Alright, so first thing we do is we pick our planet class. These are just different sort of templates for planets. I mean, you have they call it Seth class, which is basically desert planet, or you've got Cerberus, which is, you know, volcanic world. And you have all these different choices, you know. Boreas class, which is ice planets, more or less. And there's a few additional ones he added later on, like Hydra class, which, you know, has a lot of life on it, a lot of plants or whatever. You can do a Colossus class, which is gigantic. These are the ones here, the Oceania ones, that come with the Oceania DLC, which we're not going to be covering in this series, because there's a good chance that people watching this video don't have it, right? So we're not going to go into these, but basically they're water worlds that come with the expansion. You can do an unclassified planet, which can potentially take, you know, traits from all of these. And these will affect things like, obviously, a desert planet's not going to have a lot of water, and obviously ice planet will have a little bit more of that, you know. Obviously, a Medusa class, which has a lot of alien biology, of course, they might have hostile animals on there, or wildlife that might attack you, right? If you want to play a real short game, you can go for a small moon class, you know, a really small map. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what you pick, it's just pure preference. This kind of gives the game quite a bit of replayability, so for our purposes, just for this tutorial, whatever, we'll just click Seth class for our planet, for our desert planet. And these are just basically like size presets, so you can have a planet that's small to normal, or normal to large, or large to super. This is just pure preference, really. How long do you want your game to last? We'll just leave it on normal for now. We have history class, which is our next step. These are just little modifiers, right? Just basic things that if you want to have a slightly different flavor to your game. So like as an example, severe violence. Your planet will be hit hard during the Dissolution War. That's that galactic war I talked about. and survivors went to extremes to survive. Expect more dangerous AI, or maybe you want spread out. The majors will have much more chance to be further away from each other. Good option for PVM. So when it says the majors, there's major regimes and there's minor regimes. You play as one of the majors. The minors are just kind of there. They're not competing to win the game. They're just kind of there. So there's all these different sort of, things you can choose. You can force alien life to be on your planet. The planets don't always start with alien life, but you can force it on with this. But yeah, it doesn't. This is all just preference, what kind of game experience you want. Me personally, I like spread out, but it doesn't matter. This is all just pure preference. Alright, so this is your basic game settings. So first up here, there's detailed planet generation, which we're going to click for the purposes of this tutorial. There's quick planet generation, which skips it all. And then there's drop me in a game now, which does exactly what it says. It bypasses the entire planet generation process and just throws you in a random planet in a random game and just give her. But for the purposes of this, of course, we're gonna want to see the detail generation. Fog of War, again, this is just how much do you want to know about the planet. Complete, obviously, you don't know anything. You have to discover it all. Complete after colonization, so basically, while you're setting up the planet, you can see, but after that, you can't, and then whatever. So it's just personal preference. I tend to play with complete, but it's, again, we'll do no map again for the purposes of this. Number of human players. This game does support play by email, but we're going to leave it on 1 human player. Number of initial zones. So this is how you want to start. So do you want to just start in your little corner and grow out from there, or do you want like a kind of an advanced start where you've already got like 3 zones? And a city is a zone. Basically, a city has like an area around it, almost like the capital of a province, right? Think of a zone as a province that has a capital in it. So it's like when you make a new city, it creates a new zone, and then you can set the zone borders. So it's kind of like a province, basically, with a capital. So however you want to do it. I tend to do city-state start, no extra zones. I like to build out for my own, but again, that's all just preference. Number of initial armies, again, pretty self-explanatory. Do you just want to start with militia and build up from there, or do you want to start with some armies? We'll start with militia just to be simple. These are story modules over here. I like these two. I never had much luck with this one. I never really got anything out of it. It's just basic little story events that can happen, which sometimes gives you cards, stratagem cards, which we're going to go into later. So this corporation one can be quite nice. Cults and sects can be quite nice. Cram Syndicate, I don't know. Again, that's preference. If you want to play around, there's nothing wrong with it. It's one of those things. I tend to leave these two on. Development and tech level. This is basically how high tech you want to start. Again, this is all personal preference. I tend to start on low tech because I like going up through the tech. But if you'd rather start high, you can start high. This just gives you access to more advanced technologies right from the get-go. Later on during the game's development, after it was launched, he added air forces, so like planes and helicopters and things. So you can play with that if you like. You can disable it if you don't like it. Personally, I really like air forces. I think they're kind of fun, so I'm gonna enable that. We might talk about those at some point too. Oceania DLC features, again, I'm going to leave that off. This is the Oceania DLC expansion, which, again, some of the people watching this video may not have it, so we're going to leave that off. Again, I might talk about the Oceania DLC maybe as an addendum at the end of the video series. We'll see. Development speed. This is basically how fast your technology research is, right? So if you want to see some of the higher tech levels, you maybe want to put it on fast. If you want to, really savor each technology that you get, you put it on slow and everything goes slow, or just leave it on normal. Whatever, it's all up to you. Organization level. So basically, there's a whole bunch of councils that you can kind of add to your empire over time. And so one of them is the Supreme Command Council. There's another, there's a bunch of council that do your research. There's Foreign Affairs Council. There's your spying stuff. Your and all that. There's interior councils, a bunch of different councils. So it's basically saying, do you want to start with all of them, maybe 4 basic ones, or you just want to only start with Supreme Command? For the purposes of this tutorial, we'll just start with Supreme Command, just because that's how I like to do it, and I don't know, it's better to show. Difficulty levels, pretty self-explanatory. Maybe for the purposes of this tutorial, we'll put it on beginner. And then give AI more time to think. This is basically just when it's making calculations on the AI turn. what kind of moves is it going to make, what kind of, what kind of little strategies and what kind of things is it going to do with its units to try and get you in terms of, maneuver warfare and beating you on the battlefield. So it's basically just giving it more time to think, to make better calculations. These are weird little, I've never messed with these. Logistics is a very big part of the game. That's going to have its own video dedicated. So this is a big topic. I'm going to leave this stuff off because I'm going to go through that stuff and explain it to you. So let's click continue. Alright, so Planetology. So as you can see, the planet generation in this game is very, very in-depth, and it all kind of matters. So basically it gives you a random generation. So this is our Planetology step of the planetary generation, and you can re-roll this step all you want. So for example, this particular planet we've rolled is 11 astronomical units from the sun, whereas the Earth, of course, is 1 astronomical unit, right? So this is basically 11 times the distance from the star as Earth is from the sun. Gravity 0.91 Gs. This does matter for the Air Force. Lower gravity means it's easier for the planes to get lift, therefore they go farther. Temperature, that'll affect your crops. So if you have open farms, there's multiple different ways of getting food, like different types of farm infrastructure. So your temperature will affect that. There's actually optimal zones, optimal temperatures to farm in. So that'll affect it. So it's a reasonably warm planet. Solar irradiance, this actually matters. This will affect your solar panels, how efficient they are, right? So will you get a whole bunch of energy from your solar panels? Will you get nothing, right? So that'll affect that. Planetary age, that's going to affect things like what kind of life could potentially spawn there. I think this also affects volcanoes, volcanic activity, and all that kind of stuff. Map size, explanatory. Heavy elements, this is important. This is going to affect one of the technologies in the game. Basically lets you dig into the lithosphere, and dig out metals of various types, like rare metals, normal metals, radioactives, and that kind of stuff. So the more heavy elements you have, the more of a heavy modifier you're going to get on those kind of operations. So so that's pretty cool. Let's just click continue, and you can get a little preview too here. So if you kind of get rid of that and go to this little mini, I don't know why I call it mini, just a map, but mini map. You can see right now it's nothing but desert, so there's no real features to speak of. But when we continue here, we'll see more detail. So now it's going to do the geology, which is of course the things like mountains and the things like crevices and cliffs and things. So just before we look at this info, we can kind of see if we close this and we zoom out. So now you're starting to see features. We have a mountain range here. There's a I can't remember the name of this, but it's one of those. It's a chasm, basically. I don't remember what that's called. We have some volcanoes here. We've got some... again, the name of this is escaping me. Escarpment, yes. We have some escarpments here. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot of mountains, but there is a pretty large mountain range over here, to be fair. Yeah, a lot of volcanic activity. So then you get a little kind of a breakdown here on this screen. So mountainous 15%, plains 85%. So basically 85% of the planet is going to be just plains, which in our case is sand, or desert, and then 15% mountains. Now, one thing to consider specifically when it comes to the case of mountains, you might look at this thing and think, okay, mountains, whatever, it's a terrain feature, it's interesting, right? Obviously, it's a lot harder to move through mountains, but what's the big deal? Well, there is a little bit of a big deal when it comes to mountains specifically, and that is the AI is not going to be as impeded by mountains as you are, and the reason for that is you can build roads in this game, obviously, as part of the logistics system to transfer goods and all that kind of stuff and move troops. But it costs resources, okay? It costs resources to build roads. Unless you're the AI. The AI gets to build roads for free. And that includes through mountains. So as you might imagine, building a road across the desert is one thing, but building a road through mountains is a lot harder, and it is therefore a lot more expensive to do. Unless you're the AI, and you can do it for free. So, and I'm not knocking that design choice. The AI does need a little bit of help in order to not just straight up lose. The AI does play by slightly different rules, mostly the same rules, but a few little differences here and there, and that's probably one of the bigger ones. They get free roads even through mountains, which means They can expand through mountain ranges, no problem. You cannot. You will have problems doing that. It is very expensive to get roads through mountains. There is a technology in the game, probably mid-late-ish game, mid-game-ish I'd say, which makes it cheaper, but it is still very expensive. So getting through the mountains is a bit awkward. So just bear that in mind when you decide to roll a planet that has a lot of mountains. Now 15% is not a lot, but if it was a lot higher than that, just bear that in mind. Now for multiplayer, it's no problem. Everybody's hampered the same way, but just bear that in mind that the AI is not as hampered by mountains as you will be. Then down here, of course, we have just kind of the temperatures throughout the seasons. So, you know, in the Arctic region of the planet, so the top, like the North Pole, right? These are your temperatures in the various seasons. The tropics, of course, is the equator, and then the Antarctic is the southern pole kind of thing. So you get an idea of your temperatures, which again will affect your farming efficiency. For open air farms, there are of course different farming techniques. You have hydroponics, which is indoors and doesn't care about weather. There's dome farming, which is a dome, which doesn't care about weather. But yeah, if you want to do open air farming, these affect it. So let's continue and see the next step. So once we're done with the geology, we go on to the biosphere, which talks about the atmosphere, you know, water salinity, and it also talks about whether or not the atmosphere is toxic, whether or not the animal life can be eaten, all this kind of stuff. So atmospheric human hazard is toxic, which means we go out with, you know, without protective suits, we're gonna die. Xenobiological hazard, you know, you got atmospheric farming hazard, you know, all the toxic, you can't farm, obviously. Xenobiological, that's basically hostile stuff. Alien tissue nutrition, 0 value, you can't eat the aliens, sometimes you can. Vegetation level, again, there's none, there's no plants, it's a desert world. Hazard exposure level, limited, no effects, which is interesting because it's toxic atmosphere, but this refers to things like extreme heat, maybe radiation, maybe whatever other nasty hazards are there, but thankfully nothing there. So basically it's just a toxic atmosphere essentially. So we're gonna need some special suits. This is a breakdown of the atmosphere for the science minded. It's a nice split between what's that, helium, nitrogen, and I don't know. Is that high? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know my elements that well, but there you go. There's your split. There's your air pressure, which again affects lift for your planes if you're using that. But yeah, we're just going to go with this. Continue. Alright, so then you get a basic summary of what's going on with your planet. So this is the kind of history, right? So this game's big on this sort of thing, on history, on storytelling, you know? So this is a basic history of all the different things that happened on your planet. And quite often these things, if you look at some of these things, you can actually look and see in the game they actually did happen. Like sometimes it'll talk about a huge nuclear explosion that goes off in a particular area, and sure enough, if you go to the map in that area, you will see sometimes a crater, you'll see some radiation, that kind of stuff. So if you want to, it's flavor, right? It's flavor, so you get some interesting little history of your planet. This is of course randomly generated like everything else. So this is the population before the war. So basically 1.5 billion people on this planet. That's quite a few. There's no agriculture economy, no mining economy. It's all service economy. And there's 33 zones. So when we hit continue, this is going to be after the war. And a lot of people are going to die. Yeah, so that planet that had 1.5 billion people dropped to 2.46 million. So that is the insanity that was the Dissolution War. A lot of people died. The Dissolution War reached Mazuris Sinistra, that's our planet, in the year 8006. War consumed all, technology failed to barbaric levels, and over a century of warfare and collapse. So most of these survivors are scavengers. Some are raiders. This is going to inform which kind of minor regimes you have surrounding you. So raiders, of course, are going to be more aggressive. Farmers are not aggressive. You know, scavengers, they're just there to take territory from, basically. So here's your history sidebar with regards to the Dissolution War. So this is basically planet generation, and you can re-roll any of these steps to your heart's content. So do that if you like. I tend to just go with whatever it gives me, but if you want to re-roll, go ahead and re-roll. That's why it's there. Let's click continue. This is basically a summary of our planets, all the different stats we've already talked about. No rainfall. There'll be no farming going on here. At least no normal farming anyway. So yeah, we can start a new planet, we can re-roll, whatever. But let's go to start game just to get in here. Alright. Now, as of the making of this video, there's been an update. Not the actual expansion, but there was an update in preparation for the expansion. So actually this graphic here is new to me. I've never seen this before, but in any case, looks nice. So you can customize your regime name. So we're gonna call this Tutorialville. That's stupid, but whatever. I'm bad at naming things. So that's the name of our empire. It's Tutorialville, and then the president will just say, I don't know, YouTuber. Sure. And then you can of course mess around with the colors. The colors are mostly just for show. They're not that impactful. The only difference is this unit color actually does, obviously, as you might imagine from the name, this is the color of your units, the unit counters, and it's also the color of your buildings and cities, like on the map. So, but we'll leave it at this. This looks totally fine. 3 skulls looks nice. You can of course play around with the different flag style to your heart's content. Okay, so now it's going to start asking you questions about your history. So it's going to ask you, like, okay, they were not alone. Our survivors fleeing the destroyed cities followed them. These others were aggressive and tried to enslave our forefathers. How did they manage to pacify their enemies? And then you just pick one of these answers. Now you can role play it and just pick it based on, you know, role play flavor if you like. But really the key here is these: government plus 15, enforcement plus 15, and commerce plus 15. That's what's called your profile, and we'll talk about this later on. But basically your profile is like, it's a style of government, and it's also a sort of mindset of your people. So they have different bonuses and you know, stats and perks and things. Commerce, as you might imagine, helps you with money and your private economy and stuff. You know, government helps you with, I think, bureaucratic point production. Enforcement gives you certain things. I forget exactly now, but we'll just pick commerce for now. Money is always nice. So now we have a choice between fist, mind, and heart. Mind, as you might imagine, to just do with research. Fist, of course, is, you know, military and brutishness and just fighting. And then heart's more, you know, compassionate stuff, more to do with your people. Again, let's just go fist. Doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but it doesn't for the purposes of this tutorial. And then doesn't matter. Meritocracy, autocracy, democracy, that's just your government style, obviously. So again, for the purposes of this tutorial, doesn't matter, but we'll just go with meritocracy, because why not? Alright, the previous YouTuber is now buried. Ash, ash, dust. It's now up to you to lead the land of victory. Great. You are the YouTuber of Tutorialville. Okay, some cheer your ascension, but not all. So there we are. And yeah, a little bit of flavor here. A new zeitgeist wanders the land. Sometimes you get these sort of like eras or epochs, or it's a period of time during which you get either bonuses or penalties. Right now we're in a time of efficiency, so our public industrial assets will get a production bonus. That's basically any industry bonus or industry buildings that we own, as opposed to the private economy. So there's a public economy which you control directly, and then there's a private economy which you don't control directly, but it still does feed into what you're doing. And of course we'll talk about that later. Okay, yeah, all these graphics for all these screens are all new. They're all new, and yeah, I haven't seen this one. This is actually pretty funny. He's sitting there smoking. On the old one, he was kind of standing there. I don't know. I kind of prefer the old one. I don't know. I mean, this is nice. It looks nicer, but I kind of like the theme of the old. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So occasionally, every turn, you're gonna get new stratagems. It's basically cards you can play. So you can spend political points, or in these cases, the green ones, fate points, which are rare. You spend these points in order to play these cards, and these cards have different effects. Like, as example, Motherload. Holy moly, how could we have missed those juicy juicy deposits, whatever the hell it says. So basically, you know, you find more resources, right, or whatnot, right? So you get, there's tons and tons of different cards. Um, that's cute. That's funny. I haven't seen any of this. And they've updated the graphics on the cards. This is all brand new. I've never seen any of these. Anyway, so yeah, as you can see, there's tons and tons of cards you get. So we have our Ascension speech, which again is going to give us another bonus to our profile, which is this. So again, this is kind of your government type, you know, you got your society, and then you got your psychology. This is like how your people think, right? So it's just, so your style of rule, basically, your nation is kind of defined by these three. Right now, we have meritocracy, commerce, and fist. These are all the different other profiles. And again, that stuff we'll go into later, but just kind of know now that that's what that is. So one of the first things you're going to do when you start a new game is they want you to make a speech. So you just got elected or whatever to the throne. They want you to make a speech. And based on that speech, you will get a bonus to one of your profiles. So we have autocracy, democracy, and meritocracy. Well, we're meritocracy, so it would make sense to me to give a speech that would improve meritocracy. But of course, with every decision you make in this game, some of your leaders might like it or dislike it. So if I make a speech that goes heavy on autocracy, this chick here, the director of my Supreme Command Council, is not going to like it. Her relationship with me will drop by 15 if we make this speech. And that affects her performance. If we give a democratic speech, this guy here, who is the commander of our Supreme Headquarters, he's going to love it. His relationship will go up by 10. And again, this is a little beyond the scope of this particular video. We're going to talk about leaders and all that kind of stuff in a following video. But that's just as an idea now how it works. But I think what we're going to do, just for the purpose of this, we're going to go for our meritocracy speech to complement that. So, boom.
Understood.
Now you can see we have more meritocracy. Now, another thing you're going to have to do towards the start of the game is make a new organization, if you so choose, which we will do that. But we're going to come back to this. We'll come back to this, because one of the first things I want to talk about was the UI. So we're going to quickly go over the UI. There's so much to it. You could almost make a video for the UI in itself, but we're going to try and get through that in this video real quick. So there's 3 tabs on the left. We'll start there. These are your profiles, as I said, the government and all that stuff, and the society, and the, you know, and how your people think and all that kind of stuff. Here you have things like militancy. So if you have more militancy, you're going to get more free militia units as the game goes on. It peters off after a while, but it's pretty strong in the start of the game, particularly if you're doing a militia start like we did. So basically, the higher this militia number is, the more likely you are each turn to just be given free militia units. Like this guy here, you can see he's got an M. This guy's militia, right? And, you know, they're technically private troops. They're, you know what I mean? They're not really public troops. They're not part of your actual regular army. They're like irregulars. Like, well, they're militia, right? So more militia points means more militias coming out of your things. Relationship with corporation. This will affect how often the corporation, if you have that enabled, as you saw in our planet setup. This stat will affect how many cards you get from the corporations, what kind of cards, all that kind of stuff. And this is the relationship with the cults. Remember, we selected the cult start as well, so we get the cult events. And these are all done with, like, with cards. You can play cards and get better relations. When you get, like, decisions, like, they'll ask you to make a decision. Hey, can you help us? The corporation will ask for help. If you say yes, your relationship will go up. And same thing with the cults. Sometimes the cults will ask for help. You say yes, you help the cults. They will reward you by giving you cards, stratagems to play. But again, that will come later. This top one here, this is your resources coming in. So I don't know that I'll go into all these right now, but basically, you know, you got food, water, you know, oil, ammo, metal, IP or industrial points. You need that to build everything. It's very important. Electricity, radioactives, soldiers. That's important. Recruits, I guess. Colonists. You'd use these to move people around your empire. Rare metals, machinery, and high-tech parts. So this is basically just your resources that are coming in. And again, we'll go over the logistics of all this in a later video, but just know that that's basically what they are. Your resources coming in. Where they come from and where they actually go, we'll address in the following video. And this is just a list of your different cities. So we have Polymer here at 68k population. Okay. Up top here, these tabs, basically that's your map, obviously. History, this is what happened on the off turn. which in our case is nothing because this is the first turn, but like you'll see like enemy moves and that kind of stuff. Vid is the vidcom, so all that stuff that we saw at the start of the turn, if you want a refresher on what cards did I get or what research has happened or all that kind of stuff, you can check your vidcom. MNG, that's the management screen. Up here is fate points, which are very rare to get, and you spend them on green rare cards to play. Political points, this is you spend these to play normal cards. You're going to spend these to make decisions and other things. Sometimes you need to spend them to make units and headquarters and that kind of stuff. So you need a lot of these. And then, of course, credits, that's money. You need those to pay your people, buy resources if you need to, and so on. The manager tab is a beast of its own. Basically, you can look at your different assets, like your buildings of any given city that you have listed here. You can do various things like mothball them, close them, and all that kind of stuff. Model screen, this is huge. We're going to go into this in a subsequent video, but just know now that you can design your own models, your own types of units based on different technologies. You can design your own units, essentially. Leader, of course, is shows all your leaders. You can sort them and look through who you've got and who might be good in different roles. Again, we'll go into this later. I'm just trying to quickly go through the UI. This is your profile info. So these are the different perks you get. So you remember on that profile screen on the first, well here, I guess I could go back to it. Right here. These are your profiles, right? So we have meritocracy at 59. We got commerce at 48 and so on. So if we go back into here, down here, meritocracy. So you see we have meritocracy at, I guess, 59, I think. So based on that, we have opened up these two perks. And the way it works is that you have to have, in this case, meritocracy as your highest like profile for so many turns, and then you start getting a chance to get it. So as an example, accomplished envoys, we need 2 more rounds with meritocracy as our highest profile for this, like for our government. Like these 3 categories are separate from each other. Basically, 2 more rounds, and then we start getting a chance every turn to just get this perk, and so on. This one we need 6 rounds, and same thing with all this other stuff. And based on these, you can get things like special cards, like access to special cards. You can get unit feats. These are guys that'll show up in your units, and they'll embed with your units and give them bonuses. So there's a lot of neat stuff in here. In addition to that, there's also just passive perks, right? Like as an example here, martial tournaments, if you look there, it says operational command rolls plus 25. That's a pretty big deal. That's going to basically make your commanders more effective in battle, give your troops bigger bonuses. But anyway, so that's the profile screen. If you're going for a particular bonus, you can use this to figure out, where you should try and aim your empire. This is the technology screen. There's a good amount of technologies. Had we done an advanced start, we would have started with more stuff down here. Basically, green means we have researched it. Gray means it's available to be discovered. So you have to discover the tech and then research it before you get it. So yeah, green means you have the tech. Gray means you could possibly discover it. And then once it's discovered, this turns yellow, which makes it available to research. And once it's researched, it turns green. And then if you look here, you see EC right here. That means that the power plant technology is researched by the Economic Council. Automatic rifle is researched MI, that's the military council, and so on. So we have air council, right? So different councils will research different technologies for you. As you remember the councils we mentioned earlier, which again we'll go into later in more detail, but just so you know it's there. So these are all the different technologies, and you can hover over them and get them a basic idea of what they do. Type, these are all your different types of models that you've designed. As you remember, we talked about how you can design your own models. Again, same thing. Green means you have researched, you have designed a model of this type, and this is how many you've designed. Again, the light gray means you could discover it. The dark gray means you have not discovered it yet, and it's not discoverable. So that's kind of how that works. These are all different designs you can get. There's really interesting stuff in here. Some of these are insane, like really, really insane. A lot of fun to use. This is blueprints here. We're not gonna, again, this is something we're gonna cover specifically in another video, but basically when you're designing your units, you can use blueprints to design them, as opposed to a really awkward UI that the game shift with. This is just quality of life. But again, we'll go more into detail with this a little later. Up here you've got preferences, and these are all mapped, by the way, to your F keys, F1 through F8. This is just, you know, game settings. Stats, you can get lots of interesting stats on your game and your empire. I like the casualty stat personally. As the game goes on, you can track how many casualties you've inflicted or sustained. It's kind of fun. And there's a bunch of other stuff too that you can use, like capital price indexes. You can keep an eye on this to make sure that, you know, if you see a good opportunity to sell something or buy something, you can keep track of it here. If something, you know, dips in price, maybe you want to buy it. If it spikes in price, maybe you want to sell it. So it's a lot of interesting stats in here you can poke through. Order of battle, OOB. This basically gives you a breakdown of your military and how this works. So as an example, in our Supreme Headquarters, the militia of Polymer, I think is that, yeah, that's an interesting name for a city. But anyway, Polymer has these militia units. We got like a tank, which is probably a buggy. Yeah, it's a buggy. We have some artillery, and we got 3 infantry units. This is all militia. So all of your troops, when you build new units, they'll all show up in this order of battle, which can be really helpful to find troops. You can also keep track of things like experience, you know, how's their morale doing, you know, their readiness, which is important for combat, and we'll cover that later, you know, supply levels, hunger levels, that kind of stuff. So this is a really great tool as a quick outline, a quick overview of what's going on with your troops. We have a strategic map up here on the next one, which, as you might imagine, is a map that is strategic. We have the different zones that we currently know. Right now we just started. So this is like right here, this wee little thing right here. That's this basically, right? That's our starting point right here. That's what we're looking at right here. So it's a good sized map. But there's tons and tons of zones, but we only know of these ones. So we only see these ones, and you can, you know, look at the different zones here, or you can even see stats like, okay, where's all the oil, where's the metals, and where's all the, you know, there's like a radiation map, there's a temperature map, there's, you know, salinity and snow, tectonic plates even. Like, it's tons and tons of info the game throws at you, so it's a lot of fun. The next tab is stratagem. This is a very important part of the game. So as we talked about, you get access to cards. And again, I haven't played this game since they just dropped that update literally last night. And so they've replaced all these graphics. I'm gonna have to get used to these graphics again. But they do look quite a bit nicer, if I'm being honest. But anyway, so there's a bunch of different stratagems you can play. They're categorized in these different categories here. But again, we'll get into stratagems later. Just know that you have a bunch of cards you can play, and of course they use this symbol here is political points, this green fist. That's this here. We have 19. This costs 6 to play. So you kind of get an idea. You get cards every turn based on your councils, and you use political points to play them. Next is your decisions. So every turn, the game is going to present you with multiple decisions, usually. As you might see, remember at the start, new organization. They want us to pick a new organization. That's one of the decisions. You're going to get a bunch of different types of decisions. Here's your diplomatic decisions. You know, military advisor is requested, right? And it gives you this flavor text as to what's going on. They offer to pay 600 credits in exchange for sharing our knowledge of how to instill military enforcement, right? So you can go with autocracy. You know, you could take the money, get some autocracy points. You could ignore this, lose a little bit of autocracy points, and quite often you're going to want to lower certain profiles. But again, we'll talk about the mechanics of the profile situation a little later. That's beyond the scope of this video, but just know that going forward you're going to do that. So that's that. And then here's all your reports. This game throws a ton of info at you, which is great because it's a deep game, and it's nice to have all the info at your fingertips so you can make informed decisions and know what you're doing. There's a crap ton. There's a crap ton of overviews here. This is the one you're probably going to spend a lot of your time in, is the Empire dashboard. This is going to basically sum up what's going on. So this is your popularity score. What do your people think of you right now? Turn 1, we're respected. You know, this is your basically popularity score. This goes up or down based on the decisions you make, how much your people likes it. So your population support, worker support, soldier support, leader support. And there's a number of different ways you can affect that. Mostly decisions, or you know, you can pay your people more or that kind of stuff. Word score is shifty. This is basically how trustworthy you are, like how likely you are to keep your word. If you say you're going to do something and you do it, this goes up. If you say you're going to do something and you fail to do it, this goes down. And this has a big impact on how all your different leaders look at you and how much they like you. So this is actually really important. This is really important. You want to keep your word score high. Shifty is not great. You want that much higher. This is a basic overview of the different levels in your civilization. So your tech level, you know, your administration level, your civilization level. And these are sort of bizarre abstract concepts that we're going to go into later, but just know if you're looking for it, it's here. This basically summarizes what happens at the start of the turn. So, you know, new political points generated. We generated 20. Bureaucratic points, which is one of the major things we need to talk about over the course of this series. Very important. But again, we'll cover it later. But we got 58 this turn. Well, at the start of the turn anyway. You know, credits, prestige damage, all this stuff we'll go into later. This is what your income tax is set at, sale tax. And then we have something called customized points, which is related to one of the councils, which we'll go into later. You got a letterbox. It talks about all these different, you know, you have like an inbox basically, just basically things going on in your empire. It's always nice to take a look at these. This is basically organization overview, and you got different overviews and things going on. It's good to look through these so you get a nice view of what's going on with your empire. Like you don't have to look at these every turn. In fact, you generally won't. But once in a while, it's nice to poke through, or if you're looking for specific info, it's probably in here. You know, headquarter overviews, regimes, all the regimes you know about. You can have details on them depending on what your spy level is like with them. So if you have a lot of spies in their zones, you will have access to more info on them here, but the different regimes in the game. Right now, this is all our regime, Tutorialville, because we don't know any other regimes. But once we meet more and spy on them, we'll start to get info in here about them. And then help is actually surprisingly useful. There's a lot of good stuff in here. If you want to know about, as we discussed before, if you recall, from the planet setup, remember it was like solar irradiance, that stat? Well, if you look here under your planet statistics overview, solar panels mod, 142%, which means our solar panels are going to be 142% efficient, which means build solar panels. They're going to be a good way to generate energy, right? Sometimes this is really low and it's not worth it, but on this planet you can safely use, you know, solar panels. And look at this, deep core gas mod, 501%. So some of the technology allows you to gain fuel like from deep underground, and if you happen to do this on this planet, you get a 501% bonus. So yeah, that'll be a good thing to do. Dissolved metals in soil. This again talks about the heavy elements, what kind of, you know, stuff you're going to get from the lithosphere with some of the other techs, which are really nice. So lots of different interesting info in here. You can look at all the different stats, all this. There's a little help thing here. So that's that. And then of course there's a mini map up top here. Now if we take a look at the right, this is basically next turn, which we don't want to do yet. These are kind of like your different actions you can take. So if we click on our zone here, we can look at the workshop. In here we can produce ammo, which is very important, using metal and industrial points, which is of course metal and industrial points. So those are very important resources. You can make machines, which is this guy here. You'll need those for, like, you know, helicopters and any advanced things you make, like robots and kind of stuff like that. What else? Replacement troops is very important. As your guys die, you can replace them here, and they'll automatically, logistics permitting, they'll automatically be transferred to whatever units need them. So this is a really, really handy tool right here. It basically tells you what you're missing. Right now we're not missing anything, since hence 0 out of 0, because we haven't taken any losses. But as you take losses, they'll show up in here, and you'll know, okay, I need to replace 500 infantry. So you build 500 infantry, and then again, logistics permitting, the next turn, they'll get shipped off. Trade is where you buy and sell resources, which we're not going to do right now. Turn 1, I'm not going to worry about that right now. We could probably get away with selling stuff, but we're not going to. Not just yet. But that's where that is. Transferring, you can transfer resources between different zones, between your supreme headquarters and your zones, which again is concepts we'll talk about later. Colonize is basically when you have colonists right here, this little thing here. You as you raise colonists every turn from your different cities, you can do that. Like same thing like you're recruiting, like your soldiers. So right now we have 3,200 recruits. As you can see, we're recruiting 500 soldiers per turn into our army. Same thing with colonists. So you can recruit colonists on a turn-by-turn basis, and as this pool builds up, you can say, okay, I'm going to make a new town over here, and you make the new town, and then you can colonize it with these colonists and instantly get some population there to run your assets, because you need population to work in your assets, which again is something we'll talk about later. Construct is where you build assets. So if we click on our zone here, hey, let's build something. So we could build an agricultural dome, so we get some farming going on, or we can build recycling facilities, you know, wind traps to get some water, or whatever we need, right? So all your different buildings, your industry and all your stuff, your logistics stuff, it's all in here. So when you want to build something, it's right here. There's some more stuff which is a little bit contextual when it comes to the military units, but you can, you know, there's a unit admin button, so you can go change things about the unit, like change its headquarters. You can upgrade it to a higher level of unit, which is something we'll talk about later. But yeah, there's all kinds of actions you can take. You can do little transfers here, so you can transfer subunits from different units into other units. So like maybe you want the artillery from this unit to go over here, you know what I mean? So you can do little things like that. There are of course little restrictions on that, but that's something we can cover later. Then on the middle tab, we have a bunch of different map modes. These top bunch are related to logistics, which we'll go into later on, but basically it shows you the different states of your logistics based on, you know, the start of the turn, you know, or what's left this turn, or how many you've used, or, you know, what's coming up next turn. But again, we'll get into these during a logistics video for sure. But yeah, the rest of them down here are map layers, so like kind of like stuff that's shown or not shown on the map. So hide units, you know, hide the labels, so you see little names here. You can turn the grid on or off. You can show the colors of the different regimes on the map and all that. Operational logistics mode, which is really important, but again, we'll get into that. So there's a bunch of different layers and map modes and stuff that you can use in this tab down here, which is really nice. And on the bottom tab here, we have orders for our units. So if you want to inspect them, you don't want to accidentally click and move them. You just want to look at them. You can go into inspect mode. And they all have like hotkeys, right? Like I and M. You can also shortcut to all these with right-clicking on a unit, right? So if you just right-click on a unit, you'll get this little pop-up, which is the same stuff here. But you've got move, you've got, you know, obviously move is move. Group move, if you want to move more than one counter at once as a stack. Strategic move, you can move guys using your logistical points on your network, but we'll cover that in the logistics video. Ranged attack for things like your artillery and stuff like that. Air attack, so you can do airstrikes. Air recon, you can gather recon obviously. Air bridge, you kind of extend your logistics network using planes, which is kind of cool, but we'll get into that. You can build roads, as we talked about earlier. You can do traffic signs, which is a medium to advanced type thing to do with your logistics, which we'll of course cover in the logistic video. And then your zone borders mode, so you can actually redraw your zone. Now when you have multiple zones, right, as it is right now, we only have one zone, and so we can't really draw our zone borders, because this is pretty much any territory we occupy is going to be the polymer zone. But when you have multiple zones butting up against each other, you can use this tool here to sort of define which hexes belong to which zone. And then down at the bottom, you basically have a kind of a summary of what you've clicked on, more or less. So right now, if we click on our zone, this is our zone right here. So if we hide the units, that's the one key, by the way. If you hide the units, you can see our town here, polymer, and as you recall, the unit color, which is green, is going to be the same color as our buildings. So when you select the flag, the one that was the unit color, that also affects your buildings. But anyway, so you can see polymer here. So if we click on our zone, which is anywhere here, you get information based on your zone. So we've selected the polymer zone here. So polymer is the city, but the zone is essentially any territory which is, you know, contained within this zone. So right now it's these hexes here. We're classified as a big town. This is information based on our population. Here's how many workers we have. This is the type of zone it is. It's a regular capital zone. You get some different stats about it, which we'll talk about later. Pop happiness, worker happiness, civ score. That's how, like, that's like your technology, and it's also your infrastructure. Just how nice living in your city is. Right now it's barbaric because there's nothing there. Cultural adaptation. So there are cultures. Right now our culture is Barnesian. And we have 100% adaptation to Barnesian, so we are full-on Barnesian. When we conquer another city, like an enemy city, they're going to have a different culture, right? and we want to adapt their culture to ours. So it's basically cultural subversion, to be completely honest. But you want to do it because you need the culture to go higher, to get their loyalty and trust and all that kind of stuff, so you can start recruiting them, right? So this is kind of important. There's some stats to do with your logistics and all that kind of stuff. If we had a unit selected, we'd have the unit tab. So this is just basically, we click on this guy here as an example, right? So let's just move this guy out just for the sake of it, and move it as M, by the way, just to kind of isolate him. So you can see this guy. These are all his subunits. So he's got 500 rifle militia and 100 machine gun militia. If we click on this artillery, as you see, he's got 200 rifle and 40 artillery pieces. And so these are just your different units and stuff, which again we'll get into later. This is stats about our regime specifically. So here's our profiles. As you can see, they are going to match those. And then we have over here assets. These are the assets in the zone. And there's different filters here. This is basically all assets in the zone. This is all assets in the hex. So there's nothing, 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 nothing. Oh, suddenly got a bunch of stuff. But if you leave it on all assets in zone, then you see all the assets in the zone as long as you're clicked in the zone. And so as you can see, we have a high command bunker. That's like our seat of government, essentially. You only have one of these, and it's in your capital. And then we've got some dome farms. You've got some scavenging assets, which give you all these resources here. Transport hub, that's key. That's one of the most important buildings in the game once you upgrade it. That's your truck stations. And then there's some free folk settlements. So you see right here, Noinpien. This is a free folk settlement. So these guys aren't part of your city. They're just savages living in the hinterlands, and you want to attract them to your city because you want people to work in your cities. Right now there's 2,300. So if we make polymer nice and shiny with lots of cool amenities, these guys will move into our town, and then we can put them to work. And we also have a reactor, a degraded mini reactor from the old Galactic Republic era, which we apparently built our city around, which makes sense. And just real quick aside, we're going to get into this, but gray or silver means public asset, which means that's ours. We control it directly. The bronze ones are basically private assets. So the private economy controls these. We don't control these, but they still give us some stuff. Like, for example, this one's producing 900 food for the private economy, but it's also producing 114 food for us. And then the gold cards are basically like free folk stuff, or like perks, hex perks and stuff. So things like free folk towns or energy assets like that, right? So stuff like that. And then items, this is basically just a summary of what's coming in and out of your zone. So as you can see, we are producing in our zone 114 food. And it tells you where it's doing it. 100% production, farming dome, community 3, produced all the food. You know, we're producing so much oil, so much energy. We're consuming so much of this, consuming so much of that. We're sending some out to our SHQ, which is something we'll talk about later in the logistics video. But basically, this is what's coming in and out of your zone. And yeah, that's pretty much most of what I wanted to talk about. I mean, you can click on different hexes here, and you'll see more info about the hex down in the bottom right corner. So for example, this hex right now, it's 40 degrees Celsius. That's pretty hot. There's no rain, no scab points, you know, no stack penalties here because we haven't done anything. There's no radiation. We have 149 recon points, so we have a pretty good idea of what's there. But over here, as you see, we have only 41 recon points. Not so hot. 9 recon, you know. So these are important. Just to know what's going on in the hexes. You can also hover over this little picture, like this little, you know, preview picture of the hex, and it'll give you stats based on what it's like to attack into that hex, right? So as an example, if we wanted to attack an enemy who is standing on this hex right here, you would see here at the top here, troop type, you know, infantry, guns, motorized tanks, walkers. You can see that Protector would have a minus 50% mod to attack into that, and a minus 25% mod defending in that. You know what I mean? And there's like entrenchment values and all that kind of stuff. So when you're looking at planning a military campaign, it's not the worst thing in the world to look at this and decide what kind of troops would be really good to attack and what kind of troops would not. Like as an example, this is an urban tile. This is a good example. If you look at here, tanks, like this is our city, our actual city, so it's urban. So if you look at tanks, you can see there's a minus 50% attack modifier. So tanks are not so great at attacking cities. But infantry, as you see, has no mod, right? So these are all different little things that you can kind of keep an eye on. And there's also logistics info at the bottom. Like you see move type, AP cost, and all that kind of stuff. Again, we'll get into that in the logistics video. I just want to get kind of a basic basic intro to the game with this particular video. And the last thing I want to talk about in this this video is a really quick situational analysis. So when you load into a new game, you're probably going to want to examine your surroundings and just get a sense of, you know, what you have, who's around you, who you have working for you, and so on. So right now you can see this is our zone here. What do we have? Over here we have Ammonon territory. So territories are minor regimes. They're not actually competing to win the game. They kind of exist to be conquered, if we're being perfectly honest. Now they've made a change to territories, so they function more like regular miners. So it used to be territories never had cities. They're just like nomads. They live off the land and so on. But they've changed it, and so there are certain territories which actually do have cities. So you got to watch out for that. Okay, Altenair Empire, but you see minor regime, so they're going to be pretty weak. So they exist to be attacked. And as you see, there's actually a road heading from our city up to presumably their city. So if we wanted to find them, we could follow the road, right? There's also a very nice free folk settlement here. So if we look at this, Florence has 40,000 free folk, which is a lot considering there's only 68,000 people in our capital city. So that would be a pretty big boost. It'd be nice to get them under control, so we'll probably send people over that way. So you just kind of want to look around you. I don't see any majors. Again, Ammonon, as you see, is a minor regime, which basically means they're going to be mostly weak. Not all miners are weak. Some of them are actually quite strong, but as a general rule, miners are weak, and they should be conquered as quickly as possible, in my personal opinion, or however you want to play it. You can be diplomatic with them. You can subjugate them diplomatically. You can ally with them, but my personal opinion, I tend to just conquer them. But hey, so you see we're surrounded by a bunch of miners, and then we have non-aligned forces. This is basically just like a combination of just like no man's land, and sometimes there'll be like animals, like there might be spiders, or there might be, you know, just nomads, or, you know, whatever. Just, you know, this is just territory for the taking. So any regime's going to come in here and take these, you know, non-aligned forces territory. So basically it's a good place to expand into. So as you see, we could just, you know, just take a quick peek. Oh look, now we have Florence under our control, right? So so that's nice. We'll get that. So as our city levels up and stuff, we'll get people coming in from Florence. Another quick thing you want to take a look at, and again we'll go into more detail later on, is your leaders. So again, just going to gloss over this real fast. So basically we have, what, 6 leaders in our empire right now. These are their relation scores. You want that as close to 100 as possible. The higher they get, the more bonuses they get. But if they drop below a certain point, they'll start getting penalties to their performance. So high relation means high performance. Low relation means low performance. And if they get really low, they might even rebel on you, which is no good. Capability level is essentially, it's 2 things really. It's it affects their starting stats, and it also affects how fast they learn, right? So how much, like, how quickly they gain experience. So as you see, this guy, Ignatius Oakes, our commander of the 1st Supreme Headquarter, he's a cap 1, and you see he's got like low stats, like 14 intelligence, 23 strength, 18 war. Like, this is a terrible SHQ commander, right? But then we have this guy here, Archer Whitehands. He's a level 5. That's just really good. Let's see, he's got 50 intelligence, 48 war, all these, like, he even came with starting skills. Like, this guy's awesome. He's got no high command, but with that level of capability, he's gonna learn fast. So, you know, you could do anything with this guy. A war score is great. This guy could do anything that you want. He's great. This guy's great. So I would definitely, you know what I mean, kick this guy out, or kick the other guy out. This guy here, Ignatius. I'd kick his ass right out of there. Get out of there. We'll replace it with somebody better. So you go through this screen, and you get a sense of who's currently in which roles and who might be better for those roles based on who you have. So pretty much anybody would be better than this clown. Advisor, again, we'll talk about that later. We'll come back to that. But yeah, you have different people with different stats that are doing different things. So that's one thing you want to take a look at. And again, we'll come back to how to actually do it properly in a later video. Another thing you're going to want to check is your models. So come in here basically and just take a look at your starting models. So remember we talked about how you're gonna be able to design your own models. Well, you obviously you can do that, but you also do start with certain models just from the get-go, so you can kind of get going, right? So what you're going to want to do is take a quick look at these and determine which, if any of them, you're going to want to redesign because they're crap. Basically what we're looking at is we have an infantry model, just basic soldiers. We have machine guns, which are soldiers that are generally better at defending. This is your transport truck. They drive your troops around. And then rover recon buggy, as the name suggests, it's a recon buggy. So it's a very, 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 it's considered a super ultra light tank, but it's basically, it's an armored car, right? It's like a Mad Max armored car, basically. What you're looking at primarily, and again, we're going to go into this in more detail in the model design video, but basically, long story short, you're going to look at this column here, structural design, and pretty much you're looking for 100 or above in this. So these are random rolls, and they range from 70 to 130. So as you can see, the GIs are quite nice. We're not going to redesign these. We're going to keep these guys. And then the rover, same thing. Those are pretty good. So we're going to keep that. But the MG sucks, and the transport, which is less consequential if we're being honest, but the transport does still suck. So if you find yourself in a position where, you know, I wouldn't mind giving my model design guy some experience, but there's nothing really to redesign right now, yeah, maybe redesign your transport, I guess, and then they'll potentially go farther, which is nice. But anyway, so that's one thing you're going to want to do. And again, the details and more stuff of how to actually do it properly, we're going to get into later, but that's one thing you definitely want to do. And another thing you could do as part of your sort of initial analysis, you can just take a quick look at your assets, which again, we'll cover in more detail later, of course, but just get a sense of what's here, you know, what you want to do, you know, what you're going to need. Like we have a scavenging asset from the private economy, which is giving us a little bit of stuff. And quite often what you'll see people do is they're going to nationalize this. So what you can do is you can buy like a lot of private assets. Like some of them you can't, but like a lot of them you can. So you can nationalize them. So you can just buy them straight up. And the reason that you would want to do this for the transport hub, and you don't really need to do it immediately, but just keep in the back of your mind that to nationalize a transport hub, it's 500 credits. And you start with some, depending on the difficulty level, you'll start with less. You may want to keep that in the back of your mind because a private economy transport hub is not as efficient. It won't give you as much logistics, basically, as a public version of it. So as your guys flesh out and start getting farther, that's something you're going to want to think about, is nationalizing your transport hub. That's just something that it's generally good to do because you're gonna need higher level transport hubs later in the game, and you can't upgrade the private version. You can only upgrade, you know, of course, your public version. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, we'll go into the logistics later on. I just wanted to kind of point that out as something you may want to consider. So yeah, this is kind of an initial look at things. But I think this video has gone on long enough for now. So in this video, we basically give an intro to the series. We talked a little bit about planet generation. We went over the UI, and we did a quick look at just kind of an initial situational analysis to kind of get you in the game. So I think what we're going to do in the next video, we're going to talk about your first few turns in the game. So things like setting up councils, talking about bureaucratic points, you know, leader appointment stratagems, initial expansion considerations, stuff like that. But I think that's going to be it for now, guys. So thanks for watching. If you see anything you want to talk more about, or if you have any questions or comments you want to let me know about, that'd be great. But yeah, let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts. But for now, I think we're going to call it there, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.